Legislative Day number 3 will come to order. Please rise for a moment of silent meditation. And I would also like to acknowledge at this time the memory of Melissa Lynn Fortman. Melissa, who passed away this past Thursday, was the daughter of Leslie Wigfield, who works in the County Administrative Office, and her husband, Todd. Our hearts go out to Melissa's family and ask that you keep them in your thoughts and prayers during this extremely difficult time. Thank you. I will now call upon Councilman Quirk, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there a motion to approve the journal for the meeting of February 3rd, 2020?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The journal is approved. Now we'll have the enrollment of bills. Bill 1-20 was passed by the council, signed by the executive, and is hereby enrolled. Mr. Secretary, is my understanding there are no bills for introduction this evening?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you. The council will now consider all bills for final reading and vote. Mr. Secretary, the first bill, please.
Bill 2-20 is sponsored by Councilman Patoka. Assembly Areas Capital Improvement and Capital Construction Assistive Listening System Requirements.
Okay. And I understand there's amendments to Bill 2-20.
There are, Madam Chair. There is one set of amendments with a number of amendments. Several of the amendments are technical in that they just change the numbering, and they also change the purpose paragraph to reflect some of the substantive amendments. The substantive amendments begin on as number 3 in the set of amendments, and essentially what the amendments do is instead of the Commission on Disabilities having specific appointees from the deaf community, since that section currently does not specify exactly the disability that people must have to be on the commission, this amendment would essentially ask the county executive or designee to review the membership of the commission from time to time in order to ensure that the appropriate representation of stakeholders is there and to make recommendations for any needed changes or additions. The other main amendment, Madam Chair, would insert language that would, in terms of the requirement for having an assistive listening system, that it also be triggered by construction or renovation that requires the issuance of a building permit. And finally, the amendment would, instead of the Commission on Disabilities in the uncodified sections of the bill, going through a survey and looking at and reporting back to the county council, it would actually make it so that the Department of Permits, Approvals, and Inspections would do that.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the amendments to Bill 2-20?
Motion made.
Second.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the amendments to Bill 2-20.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks? Aye. Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
The amendment is passed. Are there any questions or comments for the members for Bill 2-20? Or is this the second set of amendments? Did we just vote on one or two?
You voted on the set of amendments, and there's only one.
Okay, all righty, thank you. Is there a motion to approve 2-20 as amended?
So moved.
I'll second.
Let's get it together. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Bill 2-20 as amended.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks? Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Very good. Bill
Mr.
2
Corey.
dash,
I was going to say aye.
it's going to be one of those nights.
8-0.
Bill 2-20 as amended is passed. Mr. Secretary, did you want to say anything, Councilman Patoka?
Oh, just, I think this is a strong step forward for Baltimore County and for our stakeholders that have pushed for this bill that will help those with hearing impairments. And so I'm really pleased that our council, that we were all agreeable to move this bill forward. So thank you, fellow members.
Of course, thank you. Mr. Secretary, please call, oh, we're done. Mr. Secretary, next bill, please.
Madam Chair, next bill is Bill 3-20. This is sponsored by council members Bevins, Crandall, Patoka, Marks, and Jones. Donation bins.
Who would like to lead on the donation bins? Councilman Couch?
Yeah, just a quick question. Have the amendments been introduced?
Oh, I'm sorry, there are amendments. Thanks for keeping me on my toes.
you're welcome.
I appreciate it.
Oh.
Mr. Secretary, amendments?
On the reprinted version, page
Oh.
17, paragraph C, where it talks about where these bins can be located, there is a part that talks about pavers. And I'm just, when I see pavers, sometimes I see they're not kept well. They have maybe weeds between the pavers, that kind of thing. And I was just wondering why we have pavers, because we have a cement block, I guess you would call it, or paving, so.
But they're not all on cement blocks. Some of them are on gravel and grass, correct?
Well, my understanding, Madam Chair, was particularly, I think, from the group, from the Khana group, was that the sheds, that they were the folks, the turnkey folks with the sheds. They used sheds that I think are on skids or pads, and they're usually on like an asphalt type surface, but sometimes they are in a situation where they place the shed on a paver or a concrete block because they don't have where the location is, may not be on an asphalt or concrete surface, and they also did not want to have to literally pour a cement pad for a temporary structure.
So, if I could add some clarity, I think in this picture is there's a slight gap. I think it also helps for drainage as well underneath the facility.
I'm not sure.
Is there a requirement that these surfaces where these bins are located be well maintained or maintained?
Yeah, it's in there.
I'm sorry, Mr. Catch, can you repeat?
Maintained properly?
There are a number of provisions in the bill.
And it would apply to these pavers?
Well, let's the. Proposed section 21-23-110, which is on page 10 of the bill, is entitled Maintenance and Operation. And it indicates that the first sentence is that the donation bin shall be maintained in good working order, free from graffiti, peeling paint, rust, broken operating mechanisms, or any other unfit condition.
So is that what you're talking about, pave or the surface pavers?
No, I'm just talking about the pavers, how well they're maintained. Because sometimes they can be.
And they're subject to inspections and potential penalties on page 11 in proposed section 111. There are provisions for the revocation of a permit and removal of the bin.
So if the pavers aren't maintained properly, that's grounds to file a code infraction and
Well, I'm not PAI, so I wouldn't know how they would interpret the sentence that states on page 10 that or any other unfit condition. I'm not, honestly not sure how they would interpret that, but,
Well, can
and
can
how,
I-
yeah, I'm sorry.
Can I, so I just want to say, it says that they already have to be on a paved surface, right?
That is true. On,
So would there be weeds coming up if they're already on a paved
But
surface?
it's also adding pavers as well.
I don't know what what's the
They're,
difference between?
they're like little blocks next
Oh,
to
okay,
each
oh,
other.
okay.
so it does need to be, as Mrs. Bevins indicated, it has to be on ground that is level and paved with a durable asphalt or set on a removable concrete base. So if it was on asphalt,
And read the rest of it.
with the amendment, it would say, or set on a removable concrete base or concrete blocks or pavers.
Okay.
So that,
It's
Madam-
got to be up off the ground.
Madam Chair, in the picture that Hannah provided, maybe Councilman Cash, this will help, is the paver here is used for leveling. And if you see in this photo, and excuse my language, but the rear end of the building is
I'm offended.
I'm offended.
is actually on a non-paved surface, but I think it's
Keep it level.
to keep it level, to kind of make it accommodating for the parking lot. And in this particular picture, it looks like it's really well maintained. Perhaps if we added maybe another paragraph, I'm sorry, another few words that says to be approved by the Director of PAI, so that if it's not done in a professional way, that we have some authority. And I would make that motion to add those few words at the end of item 17. If that would satisfy you.
so we'll amend the aspect of the second set of amendments. Basically, we broke the amendments down because there are three sets. There is one set that is technical. There is a second set, which is, I think, what we're talking a little bit about, which are more substantive. And then there is a third amendment that is at the request of the administration. So as to the second set, which is the more substantive amendments, number 7, we can change the language from or concrete blocks or pavers to or concrete blocks or pavers as approved by the Director of PAI.
You got it.
I think that would mean that if the place were not maintained properly, we'd have grounds, no pun intended, grounds to a code enforcement.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. It's fine.
Madam Chair, do you want me to go into the three sets of amendments more in depth?
Do all the members want to hear? You read them all. Has everybody read the amendments? The third was just one by the administration for taking it out to July so they can prepare permits for the program. Anybody? Nobody?
Madam Chair, I don't mean to jump on Councilman Jones here, but I don't think this bill's ready. I'm going to make a motion that we I'm sorry? Exactly. Yeah, I don't know if we're ready for this bill. That's why I was going to make a motion that we defer.
What are your concerns?
A concern is that we may not have considered all of the unintended consequences to this.
For all bins?
For all bins, considering that we have churches, places of worship, but we haven't considered American Legions, VFWs. They're not in this language.
Didn't we cover that with nonprofits? We said that nonprofits were excluded when they had these bins on their own property and they were already nonprofits.
Well, Madam Chair,
There's a definition of nonprofit.
there was a concern over putting in language like that regarding nonprofits because, as you might recall from the work session, and I think the note to the bill reflects this, the case law for donation bins is, it's a First Amendment issue. Asking for charitable donations is a First Amendment right, and these donation bins fall within that. And when you start delineating between for-profit and nonprofit as to who is regulated, then it does become a constitutional issue, because if the regulation that you're seeking is what they call content neutral, then the standard of scrutiny, if this legislation or this regulation is ever taken to court, is a lower standard, because it is content neutral. You're regulating. In essence, it doesn't matter whether it's for-profit or a nonprofit. Whereas if you get into things like whether you're regulating a nonprofit differently than a for-profit, then you will become, it no longer is content neutral, and it will be reviewed by a court at the highest level of scrutiny, which is strict scrutiny. And a court, I believe in Texas, stated that at that level of scrutiny, it better be really, really, really narrowly construed or narrowly tailored. And the difference being the intermediate scrutiny, it's just a lower standard of review, so the government has a little more latitude in regulating it. I hope that makes sense. So we can tweak the language, I think, a little bit, but to make such a large or over a broad statement or amendment as to nonprofit versus for-profit, I think would need to be looked at.
Is that your only concern, Councilman?
That is.
Anyone else have anybody that's on the bill have anything to say? Are you willing to move forward?
When would the-
First and foremost, it's really a shame, I think, because I'm on this bill, and
I am too.
it's been a problem in my district that it's really unfortunate that we've had to bring into play so many of these nonprofits when we got one bad player. I'm going to go on record and say that. We got one bad player.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate that we even have to legislate this.
I agree with you, Madam Chair. It's when, Mr. Secretary, when would the bill become effective?
Well, there is actually, I think the effective date on the bill is March 2nd, but there is an amendment that I believe the administration has requested that would put the effective date at July 1st of 2020.
So permits can get, prepared for it.
Yeah, I'm going to withdraw my motion.
Okay,
If there's something that needs to be fixed, we have time
we do.
to fix it.
Okay. Then there's a motion to approve the amendments to Bill 320.
Motion.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the amendments to Bill 3-20.
Madam Chair,
Are we doing all three sets?
well,
or-
there's three separate
Okay,
ones. So the
okay.
first set, again, is really all technical changes. They are not substantive. They are merely changing the nomenclature, really minor things, such as instead of pursuant to, in accordance with, such as taking out words like but not limited to, because these things are already sort of taken care of in the county code, in the general provisions of the county code. So, and again, something as simple as prior to, substituting the word before, and instead of their, THEIR, substitute the actual director name. So it's just minor technical things, and that's what's.
Okay.
And these are sponsored by Councilman Patoka and Chairwoman Bevins.
Okay. So can we call the roll on those amendments?
If there is a motion and a second, yes.
Yep, I'll move it.
Second.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the first set of amendments for 3-20.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Okay, that set of amendments has passed. You want to move on to the second set?
The second set, again, is the more substantive set. There are essentially 8 items within that substantive amendment. The first is that it would, that sorry for the delay.
That's right.
Okay, this one would strike on page 4, beginning in line 20 and beginning in line 19 and ending in line 20, that buildings and any other donation bin within 1,000 feet would have, that paragraph would read that the proposed donation bin location and its proximity to property lines and buildings within 1,000 feet. So the site plan essentially would need to contain information that includes that the donation bin location and its proximity to property lines and buildings, and not other donation bins. The next substantive amendment is that that the notice on the bin would merely state would merely be that would state whether the donation is tax deductible, because we had in the bill that the donation bin, that if the donation bin operator is a for-profit entity, that the notice would state that the tax donation is not tax deductible. But as we heard from several nonprofits that utilize Turnkey, Turnkey, while not a for-profit entity, deals with nonprofits. So chances are those donations would be tax deductible. So to avoid any confusion, we're just merely stating in the bill that a notice will state whether it is tax deductible.
Okay.
And then next, that we've addressed the size of the bin from the testimony you heard in the emails, to state that the donation bin may not exceed 9 feet in height and may not have a footprint larger than 8 feet by 10 feet, and that we've also stricken the provision regarding the size of the closing mechanism to state that it must just be adequate in size to allow any donation item that is accepted at the bin. So that addresses the size issue. And then the next amendment addresses an issue with churches, schools, or fire station properties, and in particular, other buildings of religious worship other than just a church. So a change has been made to include with church the terms or the language synagogue or other building of religious worship to make it more inclusive. And then the next one is that normally a donation, there's only one donation bin that may be allowed on a property, and this amendment would state that except where a donation bin is permitted on a shopping center or industrial park property, that no donation bin may be, not more than one donation bill may be on a property. So that allows for the rather large properties such as a White Marsh Mall or another industrial property to possibly have more than one on that property. And then the next one is that deals with the 200-foot limitation, and it states that except for a donation.
That was his.
That's Led Zeppelin.
That was Kashmir by Led Zeppelin
I think that was Led Zeppelin 4.
on the
But I'm
second
not sure.
side, or the second part of the physical
Before
graffiti
my
album.
time.
It was Kashmir?
The next amendment would state that except for a donation bin located on a school or fire station property or the property of a church, synagogue, or other building of religious worship, a donation bin may not be within 200 feet of a residentially zoned property. So it allows it it makes it so that prohibition doesn't apply to those types of properties.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
And
Is
then,
there-
if I may.
Oh, there's one more?
One more.
Okay.
And then finally, the amendment dealing with the concrete blocks or pavers as approved by the Director of PAI. And then there's a technical amendment really at the end in the uncodified section of this bill that states that that a collection bin or donation bin as defined in the act that is in existence on or before the effective date shall be brought into compliance with the provisions of this act or be removed. It says by the owner, and the change is removed by the property owner or the bin operator at its sole cost and expense within 90 days. So those are the substantive changes, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Is there a motion to approve this?
Motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can I ask the Secretary a question?
Sure.
What is the origin of the exception to allow more than one on a certain size property, a certain size commercial property? Where did that amendment come from?
I think that amendment was from the work session where there was a concern that very large properties, again, such as a mall or an industrial park, to allow them to have more than one. The 1,000-foot provision still applies. So if you don't have enough room to still have them 1,000 feet away from one another, then you would essentially be out of luck. But if you have a big enough property, again, such as a mall or an industrial park, and it's one property, you can have more than one on that property, but you still have to comply with the 1,000 feet.
Oh, so they can't be lined up. You can't have 4 and 6 in a row any
Right.
longer. Okay.
It's an issue of density, right?
Pretty much, yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm satisfied.
Okay. We had a motion and a second, right? Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on the second set of amendments for Bill 3-20.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
The amendments pass. Mr. Secretary, I believe there's one more amendment from the administration.
Yes, ma'am. The last amendment is from the administration, and this would merely, on the last, essentially the last line of the bill, strike on March 2nd, 2020 as the effective date and substitute July 1st, 2020.
Okay.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on amendment on the third set of amendments on 3-20.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Okay, the amendment passes for 3-20. Mr. Secretary, please write, oh, we did all that? Did all that? Okay, never mind. 1, 2. Okay, now is there a motion to approve? We're done the amendment, so now we're just voting on 3-20, right?
Yes, ma'am, as amended.
Okay.
Well, we
All
never
right.
get here.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
So I thought we never get here.
I know, right? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on 3-20 as amended.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Very good. Bill 3-20 as amendment is passed.
Excuse me.
And Mr. Crandall will still have time if you have any more concerns regarding that.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to Bill 4-20.
Yes, ma'am. Bill 4-20 is sponsored by all council members at this time and is entitled Voluntary Private Security or Surveillance Camera Registration Program.
Councilman Jones?
Yes, Madam Chair. I think this is a very good bill to help keep our community safe. And I understand that the administration has some concerns and an interest to make sure we have an opportunity to fully understand their concerns and be as responsive as we can to them. I'm going to make a motion that we postpone the vote on this until next meeting.
Second.
Second, and I do want to thank Councilman Jones, too, for your leadership here. You put a ton of time and effort, and I really appreciate you giving a little more time to see if we can work out some of the the issues that maybe exist with the administration. And so I do want to acknowledge that. Thank you for that.
Yes, I do as well. I think with, speaking with the chief of police this evening and yourself and the administration, I think it's a smart thing to do. So we have a motion and a second to postpone Bill 4-20. Mr. Secretary, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
All right.
And having been extended, Madam Chair, the bill, I believe, will then now be moved to the legislative session on March 2nd
Correct.
with
Okay.
the work session on February 25th.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the council will now consider all fiscal matters. Extensive testimony was taken at the council's work session on February 11th, 2020. The witnesses who testified at the work session are available to restate their testimony if needed. I will now call upon the secretary to read the cover letter for fiscal matter 1.
Fiscal Matter 1 is a contract with Pension Benefit Information LLC, Death Audit Services with the Office of Budget and Finance.
Okay, any questions or comments from the members? Hearing none, is there no further questions? Is there a motion to approve fiscal matter 1?
So moved.
I'll
Second?
second.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on fiscal matter 1.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks? Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Fiscal matter 1 is approved. We will now consider all miscellaneous business. Mr. Secretary, first item.
Resolution 21-20, this is a resolution sponsored by council members Catch, Marks, and Patoka. Rules of Procedure, Baltimore County Council. If you recall, Madam Chair, this matter was deferred from your last meeting and placed on today's agenda. Before you, you have the resolution as amended, which was, and the amendment was passed by the council at the last meeting prior to the deferral. And the resolution now reads that the council's work sessions will be at 4 p.m. And struck the language that was originally drafted as 6 p.m., Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Questions? Comments? I'll start.
Okay.
Anybody has any?
I have some.
Talk about.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. You know what, we're going to be brief. Can you be brief, Wade?
No kids.
Okay. All right, let's not talk about it. Let's just vote.
Councilwoman,
up to you.
brevity is not some
Didn't
of our
we have,
strong points.
wait a minute, didn't we have a, wasn't
truth.
there an amendment?
That's
Was there an
truth.
amendment to this?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, thanks, see, I'm paying attention. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Well, the amendment was brought forth at the last meeting.
Right.
When you were considering it at the meeting on February the 4th, 3rd? February the 3rd. And at that time, you did vote on the amendment. And that amendment was the one that moved things from 6 p.m. as drafted to 4 p.m.
Okay,
And that you did motion and second and pass.
okay. Just want the audience to hear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Madam Chair, so for clarity, the motion was passed. And
That's what we're voting on tonight.
The bill.
The bill is
The
amended.
resolution.
the bill's amended.
Yes.
So
Your-
it passed, but we're voting on it again. And I
Well, no,
just wanna
the-
The
understand.
amendment passed.
The amendment passed, and now
The
the
bill was delayed.
resolution as amended is before
The-
you.
Yeah, the resolution
So
we
there's no more
delayed.
6, it's only 4, right? So there's no more 6 p.m., there's only 4.
Right.
That's
4
correct. Yes,
Correct.
ma'am.
So I'm just going to put my 2 cents in real quickly about this bill. I, for one, did not think it was necessary. My constituents were not contacting me over this, and I know some other council members said the same thing. I believe by having a work session during the day and a council meeting in the evening makes it more available for different types and sets of people to come, whether they work different shifts, whether they're elderly, can't make the meeting, whatever it may be. And I did listen to other people last week talk about parking situations, and maybe there's some way that we can actually help with that. I'd like to talk about that further because we don't want to inconvenience people and have them paying 6, $4, $5, $6 just to park, to come in and testify, so maybe that's something we can look at. I will be voting for this tonight, but I'm really reluctant to be voting for it, because I think we're taking a whole set of folks out. But by doing it at 4 o'clock, it's still daylight in the wintertime by at least an hour. So folks that don't normally drive in the evening can still come out. I'll be certainly paying attention to the heads in the room with how many show up for the work session, moving the time. But I don't think moving it 2 hours is going to bring any more folks in than what 2 o'clock did. And we never did get if it runs into long hours, we never did get anything from the auditors, I don't believe, on the expense it would cost keeping the guards downstairs and keeping the lights on and paying comp time for people that have to stay over. So I just think, I'm going to take the words from Councilman Crandall, I think we're fixing a problem that really didn't exist. But, if the votes are there, and I think it's more about convenience and transparency, and, if the votes aren't there, the votes aren't there. So I'm willing to vote for 4 o'clock, but reluctantly. Anyone else?
Julian.
Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that we have a solution looking for a problem. I think we came up with some sensible recommendations to make what we do more accessible to the citizens, but for some reason, it's all about moving the work session because the word says work session. I've received overwhelming opposition to the bill in terms of emails and phone calls. Most people believe, as do I, that we should provide citizens with the maximum opportunity and the maximum flexibility to come here and petition their government and let us know what they believe. And by moving the work session to the evening, even to 4 o'clock, we are in fact reducing one opportunity, which is a daytime version. And it should be noted that the Maryland General Assembly, Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, Howard County, and Baltimore City, all these jurisdictions have a daytime and an evening component that gives people the maximum flexibility. And I think we'll be moving in the wrong direction. I appreciate my colleagues' interest in terms of being more transparent, but I know that we will be becoming less transparent. Last meeting, my colleague, Councilman Marks, looked up, had someone do some research, and they said that the Bureau of Labor Statistics said that 67% of the workforce was working at 2 o'clock. So I'm sitting there thinking to myself, 67% of the workforce is working at 2. That means 33% are not working at 2 and are working in the evenings. And the workforce does not include retirees who would be willing to come during the day but don't like driving at night. So we are in effect saying that 33% that work at night, the firefighters, the police officers, the doctors, the nurses, and anyone else at shopping centers, shopping malls, anywhere, anybody that work in the evening, we don't want to hear from you. We only want to do business in the evening. I think it moves us in the wrong direction, and I can't in good conscience vote for it. So I'll be voting no this afternoon. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Couch.
I introduced this bill 3 years ago and again because I believe that we need to make it as convenient as possible for people who want to testify on a particular bill during the work session. We compromised at 4 o'clock, and although I would have preferred 6, 4 is fine. I think that we need to think of the point that Councilman Quirk made, I think a week ago, 2 weeks ago, or both, where he was talking about the fact that this council would benefit from having people who work and are on the council at the same time. And by making the work session later, you are giving more opportunity to people with jobs to be a candidate for council. I know that when I was a teacher in Baltimore County, there wouldn't have been any way for me to run for council because I couldn't have made it at 2 o'clock for any of the work sessions because the school system, the schedules are set. You just can't leave whenever you want to. Chris also should say that as a Baltimore County delegate, I couldn't have been a Baltimore County teacher anyhow, but I could have taught in another county. So I think this move to make sure that we don't have all full-time legislators is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Well, I would just like to interact on that. I mean, it says it's a part-time job, so I think bringing that up, you're talking about an entire charter change or some kind of significant change. I mean, it says it's a part-time job, so you know that when you're elected. So if you want to have another job, you have to work that job around this part-time job if it's going to be your priority. That's just my
Madam
thought.
Chair, if I may?
Yep.
I simply do not see how moving a work session from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. allows more people to be involved.
It's not going to.
It's not going to. So I'm not understanding I don't understand the whole point of the argument. Moving it 2 hours and putting people in more traffic on the Baltimore Beltway. During that time, the Beltway starts to fill up at 3:30 or so, depending on where you're coming from. It's not going to make it easier for people to get here. It's going to make it more difficult for them. And it's going to be a deterrent for them to come at 4 p.m. because they're not going to want to go out and play in traffic at 5:30 and 6 o'clock in the evening on the Baltimore Beltway. So I really don't, I don't understand the thought process here. I'm not going to vote for it. I think that there are agendas at work here that have nothing to do with transparency. And I want to go, let's look at Bill 3-20. Donation bins. We took testimony on it. We introduced the bill. We took testimony on it. We had multiple inputs on the bill, and we've had multiple amendments on the bill. And we've made the bill as good as we can make it, and we said we have time to fix it if there's something unintended consequence in it. So what in the process was missing? Who was not involved in that bill or any other bill that we've done? Who has not been involved in that process from the legislative cycle that we have? So I go back to my original statement. What in the world are we fixing? What problem do we have? There hasn't been one bill that has been either controversial or not that we haven't gotten input on, that we haven't received input in some form or fashion that has gone into the bill. Can any of you name one bill that we've done that completely locked out community input, citizen input on it? Not one.
Yeah, I can. Not completely, but the SAFE Act, constituents in my district work and were unable to take off from work to testify for or against
Wait,
the
our
bill.
Did they
People work
send us
too.
something?
Our people
The
work
SAFE Act
too.
had so much input. I have a binder full.
I don't, well, I mean, you asked, I told you.
You know,
But they can't come at 2, but they can come at 4.
I would hope, yeah.
Okay.
Well, you don't have to, Madam Chair, if I could just say a word.
Yep.
I've made my case. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I think, I like 6 o'clock the best, but I'm willing to compromise at 4 o'clock. And I think that people that are working, teachers, they don't have to take off an entire day. I met with a constituent today who said that he was at a meeting, a community input meeting with council and, work session meeting, and there were lots of lawyers in the room, and there were developers in the room. And he looked around and he said, geez, I'm the only guy in the room that's not getting paid. And he had to take a day off of work to come to a 2 o'clock work session. And I think we have to allow folks an opportunity that are working to come and participate in work session.
We
The
do.
second thing I'd like to say is that I think we've grossly generalized the behavior of older adults in Baltimore County. We've characterized them as being frail and incapable, and I think that's the opposite. I don't
No
think
one
that's a
said
fair
that.
characterization. We're saying they can't drive at night, they can't go to a meeting at night.
That's the
When
same.
I go to community meetings at night, I see lots of older adults participating, and I see that they've driven there. I think, 70 is the new 50, is what I've heard. And so I'm going to support this bill as a compromise at 4 p.m. And thank you for a moment to speak.
Sure. Councilman Batoka, no one said we weren't putting seniors in a category as being frail. We were saying they don't like to drive at night. I don't like to drive at night. There are a lot of people that have a hard time driving at night. And again, I would never vote for 6 o'clock, because then when you have 2 nighttime meetings, you're taking so many people out that can come. And again, we're going to keep track. I've been keeping track for a month. More people show up during the day than at night. They show up at the work sessions. They're here. More people are at our work sessions than at our council meetings, unless it's a big, hot topic. I've been here for 9 years. I get to see it. I'm keeping track. There's 17 people here tonight. We'll see. Do you know how many were at the work session? We're going to start keeping track. I'm telling you, in 6 months, we're going to look back on this and say it was a mistake. I don't want to support 6 o'clock because that takes everybody out. I'm only supporting 4 because I know there's 4 votes for this. It's going to pass anyway, and I would rather see people coming out at 4 than 6. But they are going to be in traffic, no matter which way they're coming from. And if it's a short meeting, they're really going to be in traffic getting out of here, because it takes me an hour and 30 minutes to get to my house from here in rush hour traffic. So no one's going to want to sit in that traffic either. So
Madam Chair, I will say that once we do the counts over the next 6 months or so,
I've already been
my
doing it for
prediction is that this will be a deterrent for people to
It's
come
going
to
to be.
work sessions rather than an incentive.
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
it's good that we are putting so much attention on the work session, but I think right now, today, when the bill is generally a hot item, is introduced before it's introduced, there's a press conference. We tell the world we're going to do this thing, whether it's the SAFE Act, the HOME Act, you name it, there's a press conference. Then, oftentimes, before the bill is even introduced, people show up at the end of the legislative session. That's not called a work session, but it's a work session by any other name. They show up, they bring testimony. They have 3 minutes to talk. We sit here and listen to them. We engage them. We communicate with them. We ask them questions. We ask for clarifications. And then that's one opportunity. Then the bill is introduced. Some other people show up, or the same people show up at 6 o'clock in the evening. Same thing. They bring testimony. They talk about the bill. We engage them. Same people sitting here, sitting there. Call it a work session by any other name. And then a couple of weeks go by, we have a work session, people show up, people communicate, and then later on we have the final legislative session where people, once again, we've been talking about trying to make it better for them to communicate. But people show up and testify after we vote sometimes and say, hey, I agree with what you did, I don't agree with what you did. So right now, we have the most flexible and opportunity for citizens to testify. And my colleagues that are insisting on moving the work session, what do you say to someone, I hear you talk about teachers. You could just as well talk about bankers. But what do you say to the person who works 3 to 11? Generally, there's a couple of work shifts, 7 to 3, 3 to 11, 11 to 7. What do you say to the person who works 3 to 11? According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, thanks to my colleague, 33% of those people of the workforce is working somewhere between 3 to 11 and 11 to 7, because 67% is working during the day, and 33% must be working in the evening, and that doesn't count the senior citizens. But, you know, I guess in the spirit of being more transparent and more open and giving people a chance, we just don't care about those people who work 3 to 11. We only care about who? Teachers and bankers. Well, we have teachers that work at the community college at night. People that work in the evening should have an opportunity to come out and voice their opinion. That's all I'm saying. So I appreciate my colleagues. I know your heart is in the right place, but I guess wish you would be open to the reality that 3 evening opportunities and 1 day opportunity is better than 4 evening opportunities. Right. But instead, it's become a political football where we want to walk away and say, I moved the work session. I moved the work session. I actually made it less. And by the way, if this is such a great thing, how is it that the state of Maryland, Montgomery County, Howard County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel, well, I just listed the largest jurisdictions in the state of Maryland. If you want to go to evening only, you're going to find some jurisdictions with less than 250,000 people. And they're doing what we used to do in 1956, have a couple of evening meetings throughout the month. That's not where we are. That's not who we are. We should be thinking about what's in the best interest of the citizens.
Madam Chair.
I have a question.
Yes,
for,
Councilman
I have a question
Then I'll come back.
for my colleagues that are in favor of a 4 p.m. work session. Please tell me, and tell everyone else who's listening, how does a 4 p.m. work session increase transparency in local government?
Well, I'll say it doesn't.
So in the situation where I described lawyers being in the room, developers being in the room, but someone who's working has to take off of work and not get paid that day in order to participate in an issue in the case that I described, then they were not being transparent. We add transparency if we give them an opportunity to work their job and then come in. And I would also say to Councilman Jones,
and
That's why
Councilman
we
Jones
have-
just argued
we have
that,
two.
that-
We have
that
four
there are
opportunities.
multiple opportunities for that individual.
Right.
well, I would say that testifying after a bill has been voted on is not
Oh, no,
transparent.
but we
and
talked
not-
about that. I brought that up.
Let me also just make the point about the people that work, the residents that work 3 to 11. And I think in that case, I mean, I don't have the data in front of me, but I do know that rush hour, morning rush hour is 6 to 9, and evening rush hour is 3 to 6. There's no rush hour. There's no rush hour from 3 to 11. Those, and I think that from that, without doing an in-depth study or looking at studies, I think that, yeah, people will have to take off the back end of work sometimes to get here, but that's better than taking a full day off because you have to be here at 2.
But as I said earlier, we have more people that show up at a work session than a council meeting. Start counting. There are more
I think-
people here. So you think all those people are taking off work? Maybe they're already off.
I think that we haven't taken a good sample size. Since this issue has come forward, we've counted the number of people in the room, and I don't think that's a fair sample size to demonstrate, to be accurate as to
Okay.
the number of people will be impacted.
Well, I'll just say, I've been here for 9 years, not one, and I know that we have more people attend the work sessions than the council meetings. and traffic goes way past 6 o'clock on the east side of the county. It's nowhere near thinned out by 6 o'clock for people to get back home. And I agree with you, Mr. Crandall. I'm only voting 4 o'clock because I know it's going to pass anyway, which is, you know, it's gonna pass anyway. So just the reasons that, and when you say there's lawyers in the room and not other people, the lawyers are here because they're being paid by their clients for testimony on something that they want. So that's the reason they're here.
So
Anyone
everybody's
else?
getting paid except for the guy who wants to testify, that's a resident.
Madam Chair, thanks for,
Sure.
I guess, I think my colleagues, everybody's heart is in the right place. But I find it interesting that some of my colleagues don't want to admit that there's this thing called a legislative session, and people have a right to come in the evening and talk about any bill before them or any item at all. And Madam Chair, if you can just indulge me for 1 second, I guess what I received an awful lot of emails on this subject, an awful lot of emails. Many of them were form letters in support of, in opposition to the bill. But here's a person that says, I'm not going to mention the person's name, I'll let you see it. I would like to give my input on Resolution 21-20. Council members Koch, Marks, and Patoka, Rules of Procedure. I attend many of the 2 p.m. Baltimore County work sessions. I learned so much, and it's great to see our Baltimore County Council in action. I find that if the council is debating a hot topic, there are many in attendance at the 2 p.m. sessions. Please keep the work session 2 p.m. so that those with non-traditional jobs and those who find travel at night difficult can attend. If you want greater transparency and input in the evening hours, I propose that the county make public any amendments to a pending legislation before the vote and delay the vote until the public in the comment added amendments. Okay, a little difficult to read there. But I also think it's a great idea that you will be willing to allow people to testify before the vote. Thank you for your service, and I won't mention the person's name. I received dozens of these emails where people, once it was put out there that we're going to take away an opportunity for people to testify, it became clear that the public is not in support of this bill.
We'll see. Yeah.
Madam
Anyone
Chair.
else?
Yeah, I got well over 100 messages in support of this from my constituents. What I notice is that the most important meeting we have when crafting legislation is the work session. People come, they testify, people up here ask them questions, and there's discussion around and around and around. That's a very positive thing. At voting sessions or legislative sessions, people testify after the bill has been voted on or a week before the work session. But you don't see all of the work going on because people aren't necessarily focused on that particular issue. But at the work session, for instance, the SAFE Act was scheduled for that day, and it would have been good if everybody who wanted to testify could have been here to testify. And the other point I want to make is, I think it's fine to talk about Montgomery County, Anne Arundel, but et cetera, but it's not okay to talk about the state legislature and the fact that they start 1 o'clock or 10 o'clock, whatever. Got to realize in 90 days there are over 2,500 bills that are considered. And if you started at 4 or 6 instead of being in committee till 2 o'clock in the morning, you'd be there until the next day. So it just won't work in the state legislature.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
If I could, let me guess. Listen, I'm not an expert on the Maryland House of Delegates. I'm just making a note of their time. I know my colleague worked for many years in the House of Delegates when he was a teacher.
40 years.
40 years. So somehow, some way, you were able to make it. But let me just say this. I'm not trying to get too deep in the weeds, but the legislature can do whatever they want to do. If they want to extend their time, they can extend their time. If they want to keep it all even in hours, they can keep it all even in hours. The fact of the matter is, they, along with Montgomery County, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel County, Howard County, Baltimore City, they all have a day and an evening component. And we're moving to an all-evening component. And by its nature, you're reducing the opportunity that people have to testify. By its very nature, you are eliminating somewhere in the neighborhood of 33% of the workforce, and God knows how many seniors who choose not to drive at night that feel comfortable coming here during the day. So you can't say you're making it more transparent by eliminating opportunities.
Let me make
Okay.
something clear. By the state constitution, your employer must allow you out of work for 90 days. So it's not really a problem at all, none whatsoever.
Except for the kids.
Who? Who?
Except for the kids.
Oh, the kids.
Madam
Well, that is
Madam
true.
Chair,
They miss me, that's
Can
for
we-
sure.
Yeah,
Ask Eric
Councilman
Cromwell,
Crandall, I
he'll tell
think,
you.
Okay.
I think I'm right there with you. I think, Madam
You
Chair,
have
can I?
something to say, Mr. Quirk?
Yes, please, if I
Go
could.
ahead.
You know, I think this is definitely an issue where I think we could talk about it for the next 17
Yeah, we
hours.
could.
And none of us are going to change our opinion. Honestly, I think we're beating a dead
Well,
horse
Mr.
here.
Quirk, I think we should stay here most of the night.
I have a solution. Work
Because of you,
sessions should
Mr.
be at
Quirk.
2:30 in the morning after the bars close.
But
Work
We don't
session,
care if
2
stay
a.m.
at night, Quirk.
Madam Chair, on that note, respectfully, we all respectfully disagree. Honestly, that's kind of where we're at.
We do.
And I would like to move the resolution as amended.
Second.
Mr. Secretary, we have a motion and we have a second. Please call the roll on Resolution 2120.
Mr. Quirk,
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins,
Aye.
Mr. Crandall,
No.
Mr. Marks, Mr. Jones,
No.
Mr. Catch,
Aye,
Mr. Patoka.
Aye.
thank you.
It's passed.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Mr.
Sad
Secretary-
day for the citizens.
David, you've been quiet tonight. No, you don't have nothing to say about this one? No? Okay.
So, and just for a matter of fact.
Resolution 23-20.
Yes, ma'am. Resolution 23-20 is sponsored by Councilwoman Bevins. This is a resolution to authorize the property tax refund to Mr. Carl Merchant, who, as a disabled veteran, is entitled to a refund under state law.
I'll move it. It's my honor.
Second.
Please call the roll on 2120.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks? Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
2120 has passed.
23-20.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say 2320?
Yeah.
2120. No,
Well,
2320.
2420 now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Catch. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
Next is Resolution 24-20, sponsored by Councilman Jones. This is a resolution to authorize the property tax refund to Marlon Jordan, who, as a disabled veteran, is entitled to a refund under state law.
It's my privilege to move the resolution.
Have a
Second.
second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 24-20.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Marks? Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Resolution 24-20 is passed. Resolution 2520.
This is a resolution sponsored by Councilman Patoka. This is a resolution that authorizes the property tax refund to Malcolm Ham, who, as a disabled veteran, is entitled to a refund under state law.
It's my honor to move this forward.
Second.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 25-20.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Resolution 25-20 is passed. Resolution 26-20.
This is a resolution sponsored by Councilman Patoka that authorizes the property tax refund to Bryant Fleischer, who, as a disabled veteran, is entitled to a refund under state law.
It's my honor to move this motion forward.
Second.
Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on 26-20.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Resolution 26-20 is passed. Resolution 27-20.
Resolution 2720 is sponsored by Councilman Jones. This is a resolution to authorize the property tax refund to Gerardo Laboy Cruz, who, as a disabled veteran, is entitled to a refund under state law.
I'll move the resolution.
Second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 27-20.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Resolution 27-20 is passed. Resolution 28-20.
This is a resolution sponsored by Councilman Marks to authorize the property tax refund to Calvin Ross Sr., who, as a disabled veteran, is entitled to a refund under state law.
I'll move it.
Second. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll on Resolution 28-20.
Mr. Marks?
Aye.
Mrs. Bevins?
Aye.
Mr. Crandall?
Aye.
Mr. Quirk?
Aye.
Mr. Patoka?
Aye.
Mr. Catch?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there any further business to come before the council? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Marks.
I wanted to update everyone because when a state legislator works on our behalf and responds to something we were caring about, I think it should be acknowledged. You may recall that this summer the county council came together in a bipartisan way to oppose a church from discharging treated wastewater into the Kingsville community. That church subsequently backed off that plan. The council reacted very forcefully, and we asked the General Assembly to consider better notification requirements for jurisdictions. Delegate Dana Stein has been working with my office for the past few weeks, and he was able to get the Department of the Environment to administratively make a change that will require better notification when these type of projects occur in the future. I just wanted to acknowledge it, acknowledge his good work, and I think with this, that whole issue brings it to resolution.
That's wonderful, thank you. I also noticed that we have a Boy Scout in the back. Would you like to stand and say where you're from? I'm assuming you're here for your government patch? Mhm. Oh, it's 3 of you, okay. Perry Hall? You're with him? Okay.
Same name?
Same. Okay, well, thank you for coming. I guess you're the troop leader? Their parent. Well, thank you for coming in tonight. I hope you learned something.
Yeah, never to come
You
to
know
a
when the new
council
work
meeting.
session, you know when the new work session is, don't you? What time is that? 4 p.m. That's funny. Is there any further business? Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move it.
Second.
Oh, yeah, starting July 1, yeah, don't come any sooner. Did I hear a move in a
I
second?
move the
In a
adjournment.
second.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Well,
Hallelujah.
yeah, I mean,
Wait a minute, As customary, anyone who signed up prior to the meeting with the secretary is allowed 3 minutes to speak. Mr. Secretary, are there any speakers signed up for this evening?
You have 2 speakers signed up this evening.
See, y'all trying to rush us out of here. First, we have Gloria Kelly, and then our second speaker will be Beth Wiseman. If you can come up here to the testimony table. Good to see you, Miss Kelly.
Good evening, Councilman Bennett and gentlemen of the council. Thank you for having me today. But I would like to address Bill 7-20. This is an additional classification to an ML zone. I'm strongly opposed to this, as I have lived next to an ML zone for 40 years. And you can go to any homeowners association, and you'll find that there's always issues. Also, I have provided you with a code enforcement. If you will look at this, this happened to be not so much the code enforcement, but the complaint was filed on 6/7/11, and nothing was done except that it was marked to be determined, and it was closed 2.5 years later. So, you know, I think that any kind of additional classification that would be added to an ML zone is just I am strongly opposed to, particularly the homeowners that live adjacent to these properties. There are many homeowners that live adjacent to these properties, and there are always issues. And the problem is that this, for example, is how long it takes code enforcement to do anything. It overburdens code enforcement. It'll also impact every single homeowner that lives near or adjacent to one of these properties. And I just want to let you know that I am just really, it'll place an additional burden on code enforcement, and also it'll place a tremendous burden on property owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. I would like to add that I understand what you're saying about code enforcement and properties, but for Bill 720, this is the Mistral bill. They are already located in the White Marsh area, not in any type of residential zone. They're zoned. They're off of let me see, Honeygo and Franklin Square Drive. Basically, what they do is they make things for the military, and they ship it. And all this is they left one thing that is not in our code for manufacturing, a type of metal that they use, and that's why this legislation was necessary. And so there's no code enforcement issues at this particular place. They've been in business for 1.5 years, and this business is very important to our soldiers overseas and our public safety people that are here with what the types of things that they make, and for the federal government as well. So all this is we had to clarify, I guess, Mr. Boswick, you're familiar with this, we had to put a clarification of one particular thing that they were already doing there that wasn't in the code. So I know some of the stuff, that you're talking about from when I represented that area, but I can assure you that that's not what this bill is about.
I think that I feel that this should be amended because it's going to impact the entire county. If somebody else in the light manufacturing zone wants to do this, it'll impact the entire county. And I don't think that it's fair to the homeowners that live around these properties.
Well, this is not in a residential zone. This particular one is not in this is not in a residential zone.
Okay, but then now you're pointing out a specific particular problem. Is that even legal to point out just a specific industry? I have a question.
We're actually just adding a specific type of metal, I believe. Mr. Boswick, can you clarify it for me in legal terms?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I don't have that in front of me.
The bill, the regulation that you are clarifying or that you're seeking to clarify allows industrial uses, one of which is listed as metal products manufacture or processing. And what your bill does is clarifies that term to include metal container assembly, finishing, and painting. So you're clarifying a use that is already permitted, which is metal products manufacture or processing.
Thank you.
I understand that, but what about painting, the fumes from the painting? Is there some kind of restriction for that, or is that just going to be allowed?
It's in an industrial area. Yes. Mr.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to thank Ms. Gloria Kelly for coming out, petitioning your government. We certainly welcome your participation. And I hate to belabor the point, but it sure looked like a work session to me. I mean, here's a young lady come here, she had a concern, she brought it up, our councilwoman explained it, our secretary talked about it, we all sitting here talking about it, and guess what? We haven't even voted on the bill yet.
Nope.
Imagine that.
There would have been one more speaker if we were at 4 PM, though.
Well,
Maybe.
maybe.
That 2 hours is going to make a huge difference.
Thank you, Ms.
Just
Kelly.
FYI, 4 PM is the afternoon, not the evening.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly.
Ay, ay, ay. Next is, thank you, Ms. Kelly. Next is Beth Wiseman.
I would like to thank the council, particularly my councilman, Councilman Patoka, and his staff, particularly Ashley, who's been so wonderful to me. And thank you so much for what you've done, and thank the entire council for what you did to recognize the folks with hearing problems, because the hearing aids don't do it, and it's the looping that does it, gets it right into the hearing aid. And I thank you for what you've done for me. My friend didn't know that she could talk, and so she didn't sign up. Did you want to come up? Because you said, can I have signed up? So could she say something? I don't know what she wants to say.
Of course, we'll give you a few minutes, yes.
Are you done?
Yeah, she's done. And Ms. Wiseman, I'd just like to say, this is your third time here or your second for this bill? Second. You came daytime and evening? Thank you. Just had another work session.
Good evening,
And your
everyone.
name is, your name?
My name is Beverly Fishman, and I run an organization called Support for Families of Nursing Home Residents. I don't know whether or not this is the platform for this. However, I have had a very, very bad situation in a nursing home, causing me to start this organization. At some point, I would like to see if a bill can be passed where families cannot be forced out of a nursing home or escorted into a nursing home because they care. My mother, my 90-year-old mother, walked into a nursing home, walked out of the nursing home because she did not get the care she needed. I had the nursing home cited. They found the nursing home
In violation?
in violation, pardon me. And at that time, I was asked to only visit my mother by walking to the front door, asking permission to walk through the nursing home, and call them when I am through visiting my mother, which did not give my mother the opportunity to interact with other people, which did not give me the opportunity to see how my mother is interacting with other people. I've been to Annapolis. I have been to Annapolis. Like I said, my organization is Support for Families of Nursing Home Residents. It's a free service. And what we do is when family members call us, we go in, they sign a release form. We in turn send a letter to the administrator. Our names go on that patient's folder, and we can call the nursing home. We can speak on their behalf. We can go to the Office of Healthcare Quality and bring the state in. And not to be long, we know that we are all going to go into a nursing home at one point or another. We don't expect to go, and we don't want to go. But we end up in these places, and very often the money comes in and the help goes out the window. When a family member cares, they should not be forced out because they're trying to do what's right for a family member. I went to the nursing home every single day. I interacted with the people. On a Saturday, it's like a funeral home. I danced, I sang, I did all kinds of things to make the residents happy. There's barely anyone there. It is sad when you see your family member. My mother fell 9 times. And the last time she fell, she was left on the toilet by a staff because it was 3 o'clock in the evening, and she had to go home. She left my mother. My mother fell and got 4 stitches in her head. When the nursing home thought that I was too much, they violated the HIPAA. They violated the HIPAA and went to my sister, who was not the power of attorney, to go behind my back because they felt that I was too involved, and maybe the family did not want me to put my mom in a nursing home, and they're all against me, so they went against me, only to find out that when my sister disagreed, they called me and asked me permission to give. My mom had 6 months to live, so they wanted to call in hospice. I disagreed, and I said, I know when the time is right, and I will tell you when I will agree when it's right. I took my mother home. She lived for 3 years. She went to the symphony. She went to shopping. She did all kinds of things, and she had a UTI. I took her to the hospital. She went into intensive care because the hospital, I went home and it snowed and I could not go in for 4 days. The hospital did not feed my mother because she could not speak. And when they did feed her, and they spoke to me every day, when they did feed her, they put the feeding tube too quickly into her throat. Rather than putting it at 10, they put it at 45, and the food went down her throat too quickly. She survived. My mother survived. And I visited my mother every day at the hospital. My mother was using a feeding tube. I said, I would like my mother to have a barium swallow. She had a barium swallow. She passed. She passed the barium swallow. They continued to feed her with the feeding tube. On the 5th day, I asked, why is my mother on a feeding tube and being fed through her mouth? They took it off. The next day, they called me and they said, Northwest Hospital said, I would like, your mom can go home. I said, why? What is the problem? How has she made progress that she can go home? Well, we cannot justify while she's here. I said, to whom? To the insurance. And I said, so for 5 days, you fed my mother by mouth and charged the insurance for a feeding tube. And the moment I asked to remove the feeding tube, you wanted her to go home. So I was able to get her to stay for a few days. But we're having a lot of problems in nursing homes.
Okay.
I am on the board of a couple of family councils, and it is very difficult.
Well, I thank you for sharing your story with us. And just to be fair to the other speakers, it's only
Yes.
just 3 minutes, but thank you for sharing that with us.
You're
And
very
I'd like to
welcome.
suggest that you contact your state legislators.
Yes.
Because they oversee the licensing
Yes.
for the nursing homes. I don't know if you've done that.
I've done some of that.
Okay, I would say to keep on that path and don't let up on that. Call your senator and your delegates, and don't give up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All righty, I think that's it for tonight's work session. Whatever. Oh, my goodness. Thank you, everybody, and have a safe trip home.
Let's get out of here before they change something else.
No, right.